right now is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. He is the vice chairman of the Intel Committee and a member of the Appropriations and Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Can you cut through the noise for us? Is Russia building up troops or pulling back troops?
Yeah, what's great about the modern era, it's something brand new, is the commercial imagery, satellites from companies, not even from American intelligence companies. It's out there to see. You can see everything that's happening. You can't hide anywhere in the world anymore. And it's pretty clear that they continue to mass and increase the number of troops in both Belarus, Ukraine, Crimea, in addition to the fact that they're conducting these massive military exercises. So there's no doubt about that. And in my mind, you already see this morning, all of the propaganda units of Putin's government are putting out there these narratives to set a pretext, right? They're claiming that they're being attacked, that Ukraine is about to actually attack and things of this nature. So it's all lining up. Ultimately, the decision is up to Vladimir Putin, what he's going to do. No one can tell you exactly what he's going to do. I can tell you what I believe. I believe he's going to do something. And why we should care about it is because I think this is going to have a dramatic impact on global energy prices. Even if we weren't involved, it would. And that, of course, is a baseline cost, as you know, that then adds to the cost of everything else at a time when we already have runaway hyperinflation. So I think one more thing that points to why Biden's made a terrible mistake in harming America's domestic energy capabilities, which would make us less dependent on these global markets in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, which is why I'm a little skeptical of this whole story that Russia is about to invade Ukraine. I mean, let's face it, oil prices right now are at $93 a barrel. We had a guest on yesterday who told us that Russia is making $1 billion a day because they're selling 10 million barrels a day. You're talking about $365 billion a year. Is Putin really going to jeopardize that and create this war in Europe?
Well, I don't think that he believes it will ultimately disrupt his ability to sell oil and natural gas, for that matter, because Europe has become so dependent on it. Now, I will tell you that if there are sanctions against his major banks, as I think there will be, there's going to be disruptions in the payment system. But ultimately, that he believes that Europeans will have to cave because they've gotten rid of all their nuclear plants. They've become heavily dependent on natural gas, a lot of it flowing from Russia, and they're very in a vulnerable position. So I do think Putin is likely to do this because in his mind, this is his best opportunity ever. As you said, energy prices are up, which is more profit for him. You know, Europe is deeply dependent. He thinks there's weakness in the White House. He knows Macron is distracted by his own election and so forth. So I think he thinks this is his ideal time, maybe his last opportunity to take care of his Ukraine problem.
As he buddies up with China's Xi Jinping, now you've got the leadership in China weighing really how far they should go in backing Russia in this crisis with Ukraine. Earlier this month, the President Xi Jinping endorsed Russia's opposition to a NATO expansion. So what's your take on this partnership between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin?
I think it's a strategic alliance. I don't think it's like a traditional alliance, but I'll tell you how comfortable Vladimir Putin is with it. You know, there's a whole area there that borders China that's incredible. Always been very vulnerable, right? There's ethnic Chinese that are actually constantly crossing the border over in the Siberia area, and they've always had a big troop presence there for fear of an invasion from China or some sort of aggression. They've basically depleted that. I mean, they've pulled everybody out of there and towards Belarus, Ukraine. So it tells you how secure he feels about that relationship. And I think for China, they view this as a win in the long term. It distracts the United States, it distracts global attention, and they're going to watch very carefully and see what happens when a powerful country invades a weaker neighbor. What does the world do about it? And what leverage points can you create ahead of time to buffer it? And I think they're watching very carefully. I don't think that means they invade Taiwan next month or any time this year, but I don't think we finish this decade without them doing something about Taiwan.
Well, it doesn't seem like they're afraid at all of the United States. And in response there, let's face it, now you've got Iran being brought into the fold, China, Russia, and Iran. And Senator, you've been so great on China. You've had such leadership on this issue because I know that you recognize this threat, as do we. You say that China isn't just guilty of human rights abuses within the country, but abroad as well. Tell us about that in terms of what you're seeing at the CCP's hands.
Well, you know, the Communist Party sends people into other countries, including the United States, agents of influence and agents, flat-out agents, to knock on the doors of people and tell them, hey, you really should come back to China and face charges because your family lives there. They do it in the United States. We know they've done it here. They've done it all over the world. And that's one of the ways that they're exporting this, is that they're actually going to the people and saying, yeah, your family's in China, we want you to come back to China because we'd like you to answer some questions about some things. And there have been some people that have caved in, and a lot of them are afraid to go to the authorities. But that's happening in the United States of America, and it's happened all over the world. And then obviously, in addition to it, China's economic power has turned Hollywood and the media and corporate America into their agents, and into companies and organizations who won't question anything China does, and in fact pushes China's narrative, but are quick to criticize the United States and criticize America and criticize American governments, American politicians, and American society.
Welcome back. I'm back with Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, what kind of China policy do you think is appropriate, knowing the bad behavior of the CCP?
Well, I think the first is we have to take care of business here at home, right? And that means we have to ensure that America is a country that has a manufacturing capability. Again, we have to value it both because of our national security and also because of the jobs it creates. Manufacturing has always been a source of really good jobs, and we need that. But we also need it because you can't be a great power if you're not an industrial power, and we can't let China deindustrialize and help them do that. So that's, I think, the first thing we have to do. I think the second thing we have to do is recognize that China is conducting a whole government effort to undermine the United States and supplant us as the world's greatest power. And that means they go into our universities and steal the research, and that's one, you know, that in many cases are funded by American taxpayers. That's why this China bill in the House is so concerning. I mean, it just pours billions of dollars into the exact same processes that they're stealing from. And so I think we have to wise up to that. And then there has to be accountability. At the end of the day, we've had the intelligence agencies in public forums say that a lab leak is just as likely to have been the source of COVID as if it was naturally occurring. And there are some people that actually will tell you that it's more likely. And we don't talk about that enough. The bottom line is we know this. There was a virus that emerged from China, and it has just ravaged the world economically. Think about everything we've gone through, not just from the health aspect, but economics, the societal divisions, the fights we've had, all because of a virus that started in China that they wouldn't tell anybody about, they wouldn't share information about, and they probably, more likely than not, were responsible for.
Yeah. Which is why I wonder why Joe Biden doesn't bring this up to Xi Jinping. Speaking of getting our own house in order, what about this move to pass a stopgap spending bill to prevent a government shutdown? What are you expecting up against this funding deadline?
Well, look, I mean, this is ultimately, and I know the Democrats don't like to hear this, but this is basically the Trump budget's just being extended, you know, for 3 or 2 more months. They'd like to have a broader spending bill. I think we have a chance to do that today. Now, I have an amendment which they've offered to pass as a standalone, prevent the federal government from sending drug paraphernalia to people who are addicted to drugs. You know, we heard about that last week. They were going to send out the kits and all that could be used to smoke meth and crack. So I'd like to see that passed. That needs to be part of that spending package. I don't want any of our money to be spent on things like that. So if we can get through hurdles like that and they come to their senses and support it, then, you know, I think we can get something done today and you know, live to fight another day.